Hi there. How are you doing? No, seriously, how are you doing? It's a question we get asked a lot, isn't it? And unless you're at home by yourself right now, you've probably been asked some version of that question today. If you're like most of us, you probably said fine or good or something like that, even if you're not fine or good at all. And if you're an extrovert, you ask them how they're doing or started in on another topic. If you're an introvert, you fled the scene and took your seat praying you could finish your morning coffee in peace. Truth is, many of us aren't fine. We're languishing through this pandemic. What is languishing? Well, if depression and high anxiety are over here and thriving is over here, languishing is somewhere here in between. It's when you feel empty and aimless for long periods of time. You begin feeling like there isn't much purpose to anything. Sound familiar? If so, you have company. Some really bright sociologists and psychologists have been writing about how languishing is a very common response to the long haul of COVID. The experts are still researching how to treat languishing, but they have a few good pointers already. The first is to name it. Not knowing exactly why you're not fine or great can be frustrating and confusing. It's been proven that having a name for an emotion helps a person to manage it. So when you feel like you're not thriving, just know that it's a common condition called languishing. Next, try a different answer to the old "how you doing" question. Honesty about our emotions helps to manage them too. Take a risk and try being honest about where you're at, and you might just find out you're not alone. Finally, psychologists have discovered that people who set small, attainable goals throughout COVID have shown resilience. Through all the lockdowns, quarantines, isolation, and ever-changing restrictions, essentially staying busy, even if it's something as simple as finishing off a puzzle or novel, can stave off the lack of purpose that comes with languishing. Now, maybe the popular psychologists won't tell you about this, but the Bible has some interesting things to say about languishing too. Even though the Hebrews didn't use the actual word itself, it was happening. Whether you know a whole lot about Hebrews or you only know it as a painful pun about God's possible approval of coffee, you likely don't know who wrote Hebrews. None of us do. It could have been someone named Apollos or Priscilla or someone else we read about in the Bible, but whether it was Apollos or Priscilla or Peter, Paul, or Mary, we know that it's a sermon to a group of Christians who were languishing. It's hard for us to imagine what distracted people back then in the first century. They didn't have doom scrolling on Facebook and Instagram, or 3 kids in hockey, or pandemics. No, wait, they did have those, but they didn't have 24-hour streaming news and entertainment. Yet they still languished. They lost sight of the things that really mattered, and they needed Hebrews to help them get back on track. So let me ask you again, how are you doing? If you find yourself in that in-between place where you're not drowning, but you're not thriving either, there's a few things you can do. Number 1, remember it has a name, languishing. Naming the problem can help manage it. Number 2, talk about it with someone, a friend, family member, or a professional if it's getting serious. Number 3, try to accomplish some small goals. And last, but definitely not least, let's see what the good book has to say to the people in Hebrews and to us about languishing.